Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning and nothing around you has changed. Your job is the same. Your bank account is the same. Your relationships are the same, but one thing is different: the way you think. Now here's the real question. Wouldn't everything start to feel different if your mindset shifted even just a little? Some people will say, that's just motivational talk. Life doesn't change just because you think differently. And they're partly right. You can't pay the bills with positive thoughts. You can't fix a relationship with a smile. But here's the part they miss. Every decision you make, whether you speak up in a meeting, whether you go for the opportunity, whether you push through the hard day or give up, that starts in the mind. Mindset is not about wishful thinking. It's about the filter through which you see every challenge, every possibility, every risk. Think about it. Two people can face the same obstacle. One sees a wall, the other sees a doorway. The difference isn't the obstacle. It's the lens. It's the story in their head. And here's where I want to take you today: how to elevate your mindset. Not by grand leaps or empty affirmations, but by the smallest daily shifts, tiny choices, repeated consistently, that accumulate into a life you can barely recognize. So if you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever asked yourself why you repeat the same patterns, if you've ever wondered what's holding you back, it's time to look in one place: your mind, because that's where the real prison is built. And that's also where the key has always been: the cost of a limited mindset. Picture this for a moment. You're standing at a crossroads. One road paved with opportunity, the other covered in the shadows of hesitation. Which way you turn doesn't depend on luck or even talent. It depends on the silent script running in your head. A limited mindset is like invisible handcuffs. It doesn't shout. It whispers, "You're not ready. You're not enough. Don't even try." And before you know it, entire chapters of your life are written by those whispers. I've seen this countless times, both in clients I've worked with and in my own story. Someone has the skills, the potential, the spark, but the belief that I can't or I shouldn't locks the door before they even touch the handle. I once knew a young woman who dreamed of starting her own design business. She sketched late at night, filled notebooks with ideas, but she never launched. Why? Because every time she thought about it, a thought crept in. There are too many competitors. Who am I to think I can succeed? That mindset didn't just steal her dream, it stole years of possibility. And here's the thing: a limited mindset is expensive. It doesn't just cost you opportunities, it drains your confidence, your joy, your sense of purpose. Think about the jobs you didn't apply for, the relationships you didn't nurture, the chances you let pass because of that quiet voice of doubt. Looking back, how many times did fear of failure actually cost you more than failure itself would have? Of course, some people will argue, but being cautious keeps me safe. Yes, caution has its place. But when caution becomes your lifestyle, it turns into a cage. Safety may protect you from risk, but it also shields you from growth. Imagine living 50 more years, never stepping outside the same comfort zone. Is that really safety? Or is it a slow surrender? This is why elevating your mindset isn't about shallow positivity. It's about reclaiming control over the lens through which you see yourself and your world. If you believe you're capable, you'll step into the unknown. If you believe you're stuck, even open doors will look like walls. So let me ask you, have you noticed how your own mindset has cost you in life? Maybe it was a job you didn't pursue, a skill you never learned, or a conversation you avoided. Be honest with yourself, because awareness is the first crack in the prison wall. Share your thoughts. I'd love to know what opportunities you now realize were lost not to reality, but to belief. Why mindset shapes everything. Think of your mind like a lens on a camera. The world may look blurry, distorted, or even hopeless, not because reality is broken, but because the lens hasn't been cleaned. Once you adjust that lens, suddenly the same landscape appears sharp, vivid, and full of possibility. That's exactly how mindset works. It shapes not only how you see the world, but also how you move through it. Here's a truth that rattles some people. You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And who you are is built on the thoughts you nurture most often. Every repeated thought turns into a belief. Every belief becomes a habit. Habits grow into an identity. And identity creates results. That's why two people can grow up in the same town, face the same struggles, yet end up with completely different lives. It isn't fate, it's mindset. I'll never forget working with a man who had everything on paper to be successful. Brilliant ideas, a strong network, even some early wins. But he carried this inner script. I always mess things up in the end. Guess what happened? Every time he came close to a breakthrough, that script played louder than his ambition. He'd sabotage deals, procrastinate on projects, or walk away when things got hard. His results matched his mindset, not his potential. On the flip side, I once coached a woman who believed, even when she had no proof, that she could reinvent herself. She was a single mom, working 2 jobs, with no savings and no degree. Yet her belief was fierce. I can learn. I can grow. I can create something better. She started with free online classes, built skills one at a time, and eventually launched her own online business. Today, she not only supports her family, she mentors other women. Did her circumstances change overnight? Not at all. Her mindset shifted first, and her reality followed. This is why mindset isn't just some fluffy self-help phrase. It's the architect of your life. Your outer world is always catching up to your inner world. If you carry scarcity inside, you'll notice only lack outside. If you carry abundance, you'll spot opportunities where others see dead ends. So pause for a moment. What story is looping in your head right now? Is it one that pushes you forward or one that keeps you circling the same ground? Because until you rewrite that story, life will keep handing you the same script. Small shifts, big results. Here's the secret that most people overlook. Transformation doesn't usually arrive in some lightning bolt moment. It's not one big leap that changes everything. It's the tiny steps you repeat day after day. Think of it like compound interest for your life. One small deposit might feel insignificant, but added up daily, and the balance becomes life-changing. Take gratitude. For example, writing down just 3 things you're grateful for each morning takes less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes. But neuroscience shows that this simple act literally rewires the brain, training it to look for the positive rather than defaulting to the negative. After a month, and you don't just feel a little better, you see the world differently. And that difference shapes the way you speak, act, and respond. Or consider physical health. Let's say you commit to 10 push-ups a day. 10 doesn't sound like much, does it? But after a year, that's 650 push-ups. And more than the muscle you gain, you've trained your brain to embrace discipline, to prove to yourself, I can follow through. That belief is far more powerful than the push-ups themselves, because it spills into every other area of your life. I remember a client who was overwhelmed with the idea of starting a business. The vision was so huge, it paralyzed her. So I asked her, what's one action so small, so ridiculously simple, that you can do today without hesitation? She decided to spend 15 minutes researching competitors. That's it, 15 minutes. The next day, 15 more minutes outlining her services. Within 3 weeks, she had a rough business plan. Within 6 months, she was running her first pilot program, all from 15 minutes a day. Here's the point. Small doesn't mean weak. Small means sustainable. Anyone can sprint for a day. Few can walk steadily for a year. Yet it's the steady steps that move mountains. So don't underestimate the power of micro actions. A single intentional thought, a short journal entry, a 2-minute meditation. Each one may feel too small to matter. But strung together, they become momentum. And momentum is what changes lives. Ask yourself, what is one small shift you could begin today? Not next week, not when you feel ready today. Because the future you want isn't waiting for a miracle. It's waiting for a habit, the training ground of the mind. Think about how muscles grow. They don't get stronger when you lift a comfortable weight. They grow when you push just beyond your comfort. When the muscle fibers break down and rebuild stronger, your mind works in the exact same way. It grows under pressure. It develops through challenge. Every doubt, every stressful moment, every hard decision, that's your mental gym. Here's the truth. You don't need a perfect environment to train your mindset. Life gives you plenty of practice reps every single day. Sitting in traffic, that's a chance to practice patience. Receiving criticism at work, that's your opportunity to flex resilience. Waking up when you'd rather hit snooze, that's discipline training. Right there. The question isn't, will I face challenges? The question is, how will I use them to build my mental strength? I've learned this firsthand. Years ago, I used to think I could only grow when conditions were ideal, when I had time, when I had energy, when the stars aligned. But life doesn't wait. The more I leaned into discomfort, the more I realized those messy, inconvenient moments were actually shaping me the most. In psychology, we call this stress inoculation, exposing yourself to manageable stress so that when bigger storms come, you're already conditioned to handle them. Take the story of a young man I worked with who struggled with anxiety. Instead of avoiding every situation that made him nervous, we built a daily practice of small exposures, ordering food at a busy restaurant, making one phone call he'd been putting off. Each time, he trained his brain. I can survive this. I can handle this. Over time, what once triggered panic became just another rep in his mental workout. This is why consistency beats intensity. You don't need a dramatic life overhaul to grow mentally tougher. You just need to notice the everyday arenas where your mindset can be tested and then step into them intentionally. The argument with your spouse, practice listening instead of reacting. The overwhelming to-do list. Train focus by tackling one task fully before moving on. These moments may feel ordinary, but they are the raw material of extraordinary growth. So the next time life throws you into an uncomfortable spot, don't just wish it away. See it for what it is, training ground. Every decision, every reaction, every test of patience is a rep for your mind. And the more reps you take, the stronger, steadier, and sharper your mindset becomes. Facing the enemies of the mind. Every warrior knows that the greatest battles are not fought on open fields, but in hidden places. The same is true for us. The fiercest enemies you'll ever face don't come from outside. They live in your head. Fear, excuses, comparison, guilt. They sneak in quietly, disguised as being realistic or staying safe. But make no mistake, they are thieves. They rob you of courage, momentum, and joy. Fear whispers, what if you fail? And here's the kicker, sometimes you will fail. But failure itself isn't the enemy. It's the belief that failure defines you that keeps you trapped. Excuses follow right behind, wrapping you in stories. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I'll start when things settle down. And yet, how often do things truly settle down? If you wait for perfect conditions, you'll wait forever. Then comes comparison, the silent poison. Scrolling through social media, You measure your behind the scenes against someone else's highlight reel. Suddenly your progress feels small. Your dreams feel silly. But here's the truth. Comparison is like trying to run someone else's race. You'll exhaust yourself and never cross your finish line. And finally, on guilt, oh, that heavy chain. Guilt tells you you've already wasted too much time. You've made too many mistakes. You don't deserve a fresh start. But let me tell you, guilt doesn't protect you from repeating the past. It keeps you chained to it. I once coached a man who had all four enemies ruling his mind. He feared rejection, excused his procrastination, compared himself to everyone around him, and carried guilt for years of missed chances. He believed the best of life had already passed him by. But little by little, he started confronting each enemy. He admitted his fear, but acted anyway. He replaced excuses with 10-minute actions. He deleted social media for 30 days to silence comparison. And he wrote a letter to himself, forgiving the years he thought he had wasted. Slowly, the thieves lost their power. That's the strategy. You don't just resist these enemies. You replace them. Swap fear with faith. Excuses with effort. Comparison with gratitude. Guilt with self-compassion. It's not about silencing the voices forever. It's about refusing to let them drive the car. So, the next time fear or excuses knock at the door of your mind, pause and ask, if I don't evict them now, what will they steal from me tomorrow? Because every day you choose which voices get to shape your story. The power of words and self-dialogue. If you really want to know where your life is headed, listen closely, not to the world outside, but to the words you whisper to yourself when no one else can hear. Because words aren't just sounds, they're seeds. And the ones you plant in your mind grow into the reality you live. Here's what most people forget. Self-talk isn't harmless, background noise. It's a running script that trains your brain what to expect. Say often enough, I'm not good at this. And your mind accepts it as fact, shutting down possibility before it even appears. But flip that script. I can learn. I can improve. I can figure this out. And suddenly you give your brain permission to seek solutions instead of limitations. I remember working with a young professional who was brilliant, yet paralyzed by self-doubt. Every presentation at work began with an inner monologue. You're going to mess up. They'll see you're not good enough. And guess what? The tension in his voice, the hesitations in his speech, they proved his thoughts, right? But when we worked on shifting his language, even something as simple as saying, I'm prepared. I've done the work. I bring value here. His confidence began to show. His performance didn't change because he suddenly gained new skills. It changed because his words rewired the way he experienced himself. This is why athletes talk to themselves before games, why top performers use affirmations before stepping on stage. It's not superstition, it's strategy. Because your inner dialogue shapes your outer presence. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can start small. The next time you catch yourself saying, I can't, pause it. Replace it with, I'm learning how. Instead of I always fail, try. I'm practicing until I get better. These subtle shifts may sound trivial, but stacked over time, they carve deep grooves in your mindset. Let's be honest, though it's not easy. The voice of criticism often sounds louder than encouragement. But here's the thing. You are the author. You can edit the script. You can choose words that empower instead of sabotage. So ask yourself, if the world could hear the way you speak to yourself, would you be proud or would you be embarrassed by how harsh you are? And more importantly, what one phrase could you start speaking today that would write a better story for tomorrow? Stories of transformation. Sometimes the best way to understand the power of mindset is not through theory, but through stories, real people, who turned their lives around not because conditions magically improved, but because they chose to think differently. Take Oprah Winfrey, born into poverty, enduring abuse and hardship. The odds were stacked against her. By any statistic, she should have been another name, lost to circumstance. But Oprah refused to let her past dictate her future. She carried a mindset that said, "My story is not finished. I will rise." And she did, becoming not only a media icon, but a voice for millions who needed to see what was possible. Her success wasn't just talent, it was the refusal to let her inner world stay trapped by her outer conditions. Or consider a man. I once worked with a father of 3 who had been laid off after 20 years in the same job. He was devastated, convinced that at his age he was too old to start over. For months, he spiraled, comparing himself to younger colleagues, telling himself he was irrelevant. But slowly, we worked on shifting his mindset. Instead of too old, he began saying, experienced. Instead of outdated, he reframed as adaptable. Within a year, he launched a consulting business, leveraging skills he once dismissed as obsolete. Today, he not only earns more, but he feels alive again because he rewrote his mental script. And then there's the story of a woman in her late 50s I met at a workshop. For decades, she told herself, "I missed my chance." She longed to learn music, but buried the dream, believing she was too late. When she finally allowed herself to try, taking small lessons week after week, she discovered not only a new skill, but a new identity, one filled with joy, creativity, and confidence. That decision rippled through her whole life, inspiring her grandchildren, strengthening her marriage, and reminding her that growth doesn't expire with age. These stories all share one truth. Circumstances didn't change. First, mindset did. And when the inner shift happened, the outer transformation followed. So I want you to pause here and reflect whose story inspires you the most. And more importantly, what story are you writing right now? Because whether you realize it or not, your thoughts are shaping the plot of your life. The question is, will you let old beliefs keep holding the pen? Or will you take it back and author a new chapter? Raising standards, the thermostat of life. Here's a powerful image to keep in mind. Your mindset is not a thermometer. It doesn't just reflect the temperature of your life. It's a thermostat. It sets the temperature. It determines what you will tolerate, how high you'll climb, and what you'll call normal. Think about it. If your standard is survival, then as long as you're scraping by, you'll accept it. If your standard is mediocrity, you'll settle for good enough and call it peace. But the moment you raise your standard even slightly, everything shifts. Suddenly, the habits, the people, the choices that once felt comfortable now feel suffocating. Mediocrity becomes unbearable. I once worked with a client who stayed in a toxic relationship for years. She told herself, "This is just how love is. Everyone struggles." Her thermostat was set to tolerate disrespect and chaos. But when she finally raised her standard, when she decided, "I will no longer accept being treated this way," her entire life recalibrated. Within months, she built healthier boundaries, attracted healthier friendships, and eventually created a partnership grounded in respect. The external change began the moment she changed the temperature inside. We see this everywhere. A person who sets a low standard for health shrugs off fatigue, poor sleep, and stress until it becomes the norm. But the day they say, "I deserve energy, I deserve strength," they start making different choices. They hydrate more. They move their body. They guard their rest. And over time, their life rises to meet that standard. The psychology is simple but profound. Your brain will fight to stay aligned with the standards you set. If your standard is excellence, Your brain won't let you get away with laziness for long. If your standard is growth, you'll feel restless when you stand still. That restlessness is not failure. It's feedback, telling you the thermostat is set higher than where you're living right now. So let me ask you directly, what's one area of your life where your standard is too low? Where have you been tolerating less than you deserve, whether in health, work, relationships, or self-respect? Because raising your standard is not about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's about declaring, this is who I am now. This is what I will accept, no less than. When you reset that thermostat, your life doesn't just warm up a little, it transforms. From pain to power. Pain. Nobody wants it. Yet everyone carries it. Sometimes it comes in sharp bursts. A breakup. A layoff. A betrayal. Other times it lingers quietly in the background, like an old injury that never fully heals. Most people see pain as punishment, a cruel detour they wish they could erase. But here's the truth. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is your training partner. It doesn't arrive to break you, it arrives to build you. Think back to a time when life knocked the wind out of you. Maybe you failed an exam you thought you had in the bag. Or maybe someone you trusted walked away. In the moment, it felt like the end of the world. But looking back now, didn't that pain shape you into someone stronger, sharper, wiser? Didn't it leave you with lessons you never would have learned in comfort? I once coached a man who lost his entire savings in a failed business. For months, he carried shame like a second skin. He told himself, I'm ruined. I can't trust myself anymore. But as we worked together, something shifted. He began to see that failure wasn't proof of weakness, it was proof of courage. He had darred, he had tried, and now, armed with hard-earned wisdom, he rebuilt. Today, he runs a thriving company. And he often says, the loss wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. It was the best professor I ever had. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the ability to use adversity as fuel for transformation. Not everyone chooses it, but those who do emerge with deeper resilience, stronger relationships, and a clearer sense of purpose. Pain becomes the soil where new strength takes root. Here's the key. You can't always control the pain, but you can control the meaning you give it. You can choose to let it harden you, or you can choose to let it carve you into something greater. The same fire that melts wax hardens clay. It depends on what you're made of. And more importantly, what you decide to become. So instead of asking, why me, try asking, what is this pain preparing me for? That simple shift moves you from victim to victor, from powerless to powerful. And once you begin to see pain not as punishment, but as preparation, every scar becomes a story of strength, legacy, thinking, and generational change. When most people think about mindset, they think only about their own lives, their goals, their struggles, their growth. But here's the bigger picture. Your mindset is not just about you. It's about the ripple effect you leave behind. Every belief you carry, every standard you raise, every habit you build, those choices echo into the lives of the people around you, and often into generations that follow. Think about families. Some pass down wealth, some pass down traditions, but almost every family passes down mindset. If your parents lived with a scarcity mindset, always saying, we can't afford that, or that's too risky, chances are you absorbed those beliefs without even realizing it. On the flip side, if you grew up watching someone who faced hardship with grit and optimism, you probably carry some of that strength today. I once worked with a young woman who came from a long line of people who believed life was just about surviving. Keep your head down. Don't expect too much. And maybe you'll get by. That was the family motto. But she decided she wouldn't pass that down to her own children. She started small writing affirmations on sticky notes. setting weekly family goals, openly talking with her kids about gratitude and growth. Over time, her children began to mirror that language. She wasn't just changing her own mindset, she was rewriting the mental DNA of her family. This is the essence of legacy thinking, recognizing that how you think today shapes not only your tomorrow, but someone else's as well. Imagine what happens when a parent who has always believed I'm not good enough chooses instead to say, I'm still learning, and that's okay. The child watching learns resilience instead of resignation. Imagine what happens when a leader at work stops modeling burnout and starts modeling balance. The whole team learns a new standard. Your mindset can be the cycle breaker, the one that says, this pattern ends with me. And when you do that, you're not just elevating your own life, you're planting seeds of possibility in the lives of others. So let me ask, what kind of mental inheritance are you leaving behind? Are you handing the next generation fear, doubt, and scarcity? Or are you showing them courage, clarity, and purpose? Because your thoughts aren't just shaping you, they're shaping your legacy. The daily blueprint. Here's the truth. Big dreams collapse without small daily actions. Consistency is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. That's why I call this section the blueprint. Because if you want a new life, you don't need to start with a mansion. You start with bricks. One brick laid each day with intention creates the structure you'll eventually live in. So what does that look like in practice? It's surprisingly simple. Morning gratitude before you touch your phone. Jot down 3 things you're grateful for. It shifts your focus from scarcity to abundance and primes your brain for opportunities instead of problems. 10 minutes of learning. Read, listen, or study something that stretches you. 10 minutes a day is 60 hours a year. That's more than enough to master a skill or change your career path. One empowering phrase, pick a line that fuels you and repeat it throughout the day. Something like, I can handle this, or I am building a stronger me. Words are anchors. They keep you steady when life tries to pull you off course. Micro goal. Set one small task that aligns with your larger purpose. Not 10, just 1. Finishing it gives you proof. I move forward daily. Evening reflection. Before bed. Ask yourself, what did I build in my mind today? This keeps your growth conscious and reminds you that progress is always in your control. I know what some people are thinking. That sounds too simple. How could something so small change my life? But here's the beauty. You don't need massive overhaul. You need habits that are sustainable. And sustainable habits always start small. The compound effect takes care of the rest. I've seen it firsthand. A client once told me, I don't have time for personal growth. So I challenged him to read just 2 pages of a book before bed. 2 pages. 6 months later, and he had finished 6 books, something he hadn't done in years. And the insights from those pages began showing up in his leadership at work. His team noticed. His family noticed. And most importantly, he noticed. So now I'll turn the question to you. If you had to choose just one habit from this blueprint to start today, which would it be? Gratitude learning, a phrase, a micro goal, reflection, share it, own it, and then commit to it daily. Because the blueprint doesn't work unless you pick up the pen and start drawing your own future. So here we are, full circle. We've peeled back the layers of mindset from the prison of limiting beliefs to the blueprint of daily actions. And if there's one truth I hope sticks with you, it's this. Transformation isn't about waiting for lightning to strike. It's about choosing over and over again to think higher, act braver, and live with intention. Because here's the reality, your life won't rise any higher than your mind does. The outer world is always playing catch up to the inner world. If you keep thinking small, your life stays small. But if you dare to think bigger, even just a little bigger each day, your life will stretch to meet it. Now, I know the temptation. You might be nodding along, feeling inspired. And tomorrow morning, life will pull you back into the same routines. That's normal. That's the pull of the old mindset trying to drag you back into what's familiar. But here's where the shift happens when you decide that even on ordinary days, even on hard days, you will choose the elevated thought. You will choose the higher standard. You will choose one small action. That's what separates wishful thinking from real change. Consistency. And let's be honest, it won't always feel glamorous. Growth rarely does. But over time, the compound effect will be undeniable. You'll notice you speak differently. You'll handle stress with more calm. You'll stop tolerating what once drained you. People around you will wonder what changed. The answer: you did. So I want to leave you with this challenge. Don't just listen. Apply. Pick one shift, just one that resonated with you today. Maybe it's gratitude in the morning. Maybe it's rewriting your self-talk. Maybe it's setting a higher standard in one area of your life. Whatever it is, commit to it for 7 days straight. Then come back and tell me, what did you notice? And now, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of this journey spoke to you the most? Have you ever caught yourself trapped by your own mindset, and how did you break free? Share your thoughts and your stories in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this message resonated with you, do me a favor, hit that like button. Share it with someone you know who needs a push. And subscribe if you want more content like this every single week, because together, we're building a community where growth is the standard, not the exception. Remember this: you don't have to wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, or the perfect version of yourself. You already hold the key. And every small choice you make from this moment forward, that's how you unlock the life you've been waiting for. So rise, choose, act, and let the elevated mind lead you to an elevated life.